Connect Method Parenting will get your kids to want to listen to you. You're not going to control or manipulate them to listen to you. You're going to be showing up as a person who is magnetic, who is calm, who is grounded, who people gravitate towards and feel safe around and want to hear input and suggestions and are open to directions. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andee Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hello, hello, hello. Oh my goodness. I have been thinking about recording episodes for you all week. For some reason, I'm waking up thinking about it. In fact, today I went to bed at a decent hour, but my body got me up at 5:15 and it was like, go record a podcast episode. So it's like 5:53 now. And I did a few things and now I'm up at my mic. I was going to say my little set. I mean, it is my little setup. It's not really a podcast studio. We're traveling right now. So I have my mic and I plug it into my computer and I record episodes for you wherever we go. I've done it all over the world. And it's early, which is great because it's before my family's getting up. So I'm going to record this for you. We only have a week and a half left. So we're trying to make the most of it. So I'm so glad that I'm up and at 'em. We're going to get this to you. I'm loving New Zealand still. I know I say that every time I get on and talk about New Zealand. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. And I'm excited to go back home. I need to do a whole episode on the journey of this trip and relate it to parenting and life because there are so many similarities. But let's get to business, okay? Today, what I'm really wanting to talk to you about is this concept of what you are doing versus who you are being. So what you do versus who you are. I wanted to talk about it because who you are being for your child matters way more than what you're doing or saying or asking. The body language, all of that, who you are being, which is how you are feeling, the thoughts you are having, the energy, the emotions that are coming up for you when you're around your child in different situations, that sends a stronger message to your child than any words or actions. So you could say, time to wake up. And if who you are being is frustrated, irritated, impatient, if that's the version of you that's shown up for the day that day versus a compassionate and understanding parent, those words, time to wake up, are going to sound and land so differently for your child. So differently. And if you're having trouble relating to this, struggling to understand what I'm saying, think about a time where someone has said something to you. It could be from your childhood. It could be from yesterday. They've said something to you. And in retrospect, you realize that the words weren't crazy. They might have said, given you a direction. They might have given you feedback. But the way they were being, how they were showing up, the emotions that were flavoring those words had them come across very different. I remember when I was first trying to shift my parenting, thinking to myself, why did that not work? I said the words in a calm voice. I was raging inside, but I kept calm. I didn't raise my voice. And it's because the emotions behind the words don't lie. I didn't know this at the time, but as I did more research, which is funny because I went to nursing school, so I learned a lot about how our bodies work. And I don't remember when they discovered mirror neurons. Maybe it was after, or maybe it just wasn't relevant to what I was studying at the time. They didn't think it mattered. But when I learned about mirror neurons and the way that they send out this signal, it's like a signal. It's like a radio signal. I mean, that's not how the scientists would probably describe it, but that's what makes sense to my brain. It's this broadcasting message of the emotional charge behind the words. And then our children have mirror neurons and they're receiving the signal I'm sending out. So even if my words sound good, if the emotion behind them doesn't match, they pick up on the discrepancy and it's not going to land the same way. So there is a difference between what you do and who you get to be. We get to do a lot of things. We get to do actions. We get to have roles. We get to have careers. We get to have we fulfill different roles. We're a parent. We're a neighbor. We're a sister. We're a friend. So we have these different roles. So we get to do a lot of things in our life, but who you get to be as you go about your life in those different roles, that's very different. I remember a popular speaker once telling me a little following of people had decided that they really wanted to be a speaker like her. And they were wanting to know how she had gotten so many great speaking gigs and how to market themselves. And they were starting to show up at the different events she was speaking at and ask her to teach them all the things. And I don't know if she was wanting to teach them or if they were just following along. It sounded the way it was described to me, like they were trying to copy her, which happens so much. So much of the time we see somebody and we think that is who I want to copy. And I want to be like them and I want their success or I want their results, whether it's, someone in a career, financial results or parenting results, same difference. We look at them and we think, I just need to do what they're doing. And this, in essence, is what she said, which I thought was so powerful. She said that it's not what I do, it's that has gotten me all this success. It's who I am. And it's not about how many people are in your audience. This is what the speaker was telling this group of people. And this was, someone told me about this story, so I thought it was interesting. So it might not be accurate, but it's still really powerful to me. And she said, it's not about how many people are in your audience and who knows your name, but it's about who you are to yourself. Love that last part, who you are to yourself. For so many years, in those early days of parenting, which was the moment of reckoning for me, because I'd been very successful. I'd been able to basically do anything I wanted to do. And when I started having kids is when a lot of the parts of me that came up that I was looking at that I didn't like, that I had to confront, that's when that happened. And this idea that it's who you are to yourself versus what I am doing as a parent, or even, I think it even trumps who I'm trying to be for my kids. It's who are you trying to be for yourself? So no matter what job you do, whether it was a parent for me or a nurse, a wife, a friend, a student, I started wondering, am I showing up as me? I still ask myself this question. Am I showing up as me, or am I changing myself, acting in a certain way because of what I think they need, they want? Because I want to be successful, because I want my kids to act a certain way. And don't get me wrong, I love success and I love showing up in a way that is conducive to our children wanting to listen to you. That's why I use that phrase so much as I'm describing connect method parenting. That connect method parenting will get your kids to want to listen to you. You're not going to control or manipulate them to listen to you. You're going to be showing up as a person who is magnetic, who is calm, who is grounded, who people gravitate towards and feel safe around and want to hear input and suggestions and are open to directions. That's what we're creating. And it's not what I do as much as who I am being while I'm doing it. So success isn't something that we're going to get from a job, from a role, from how our children behave. It is something that each of us are. We are that person first and foremost. So if I think I am successful, regardless of external things or external measurements, so it doesn't matter what I'm doing, what job I'm doing. If I believe that I'm going to bring my full self to this job, whether it's a career job, I'm working for someone else, or I'm showing up in my job as a parent, I'm bringing my full self there. I know who I am and I will be successful because I will be there. So this has clicked in a way that has really served me years ago and continues to serve me. And I've worked so hard to make it true so that no matter what situation I'm in, no matter what position, no matter what role, no matter what job I'm playing in that moment, if I'm the carpool lady, the snack lady, the registered nurse working on a med-surg floor, the friend, the sister, whatever, in all of my jobs and all of my roles, in all of the different situations, I try to think of myself as a successful person. And as a result, I'm successful in all of those jobs, all of those roles. And really the jobs, the roles, the titles don't determine that. The situations don't determine that. So I used to think that there were certain situations that I didn't want to go to because inherently those situations weren't fun or weren't, something that I was going to enjoy. But here's the kicker. We get to decide that wherever we are going to have a good time. We are going to enjoy ourselves. which is so liberating. And I could still decide not to go to that event or that party or that gathering, but not because it's inherently a certain way, but because it doesn't serve me. Or I could decide to go and show up with my full self and enjoy myself wherever I am. So again, let's circle back. Who do you want to be in your life for yourself, with your children, in your career? They all relate. How we do anything is how we do everything. That's why inside of League and on this podcast and everything I do with Connect Method Parenting, we're not just talking about what to do when our kids do XYZ. In fact, I rarely talk about that directly. We get there, but first we set this beautiful foundation so that us as a parent is ready to interact with our child, and we read their behavior as information, and we instead ask ourselves, what do I need to do because of the behavior, because they're struggling with this thing? So we do get there. But the preeminent focus, the primary focus, is who we are being in all of the situations in our life, so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves, so we can bring all of us there. And when we do that, we're successful no matter what. We feel so good about what we're doing. And if we make a mistake, we recover fast and we respect how we're showing up. So are you willing to do whatever it takes to be successful? Thinking that what you do is separate from who you are being. And then when you integrate those, the being and the doing, then you get to take the best part of who you are everywhere. We're first focusing on who am I being, and then really the doing flows out. It's hard to mess up what we do if we've dialed in who we are being. It really is challenging to mess up the actions if the energy, if the emotion is right. And that's why, and I think this is such good news, you don't have to change anything in situations that you have no control over. Kids' behavior, other people's actions, the weather, all of those things. We don't have to change any of those things to change who we are being in the situation, to bring our full self into the situation. You don't have to change bedtime, although you might want to. You might want to change the dynamics of bedtime and get creative, change stuff up. I highly recommend it. I'm not saying you just change emotionally who you're being in the moment and then, don't do anything else. In fact, it's almost impossible for that to happen, because when we change emotionally how we are showing up to an event, to a situation, to an encounter with our children's off-track behavior, it's impossible to not do something different. And it might take some time before we really dial in what we want to be doing and we have the awareness and the skill set to do something different. But at the very least, even if we do the same default actions we've been doing before, they will be done differently. And I think that's great news. You don't have to change all of this stuff. You don't have to get your teenagers to agree with you on the phone standards to be who you are or what you believe about them. You're going to be you regardless of their pushback, their opinions. Nothing out there determines who you are. So it's a concept that I want to teach you, especially those of you who are trying to figure out who you are still, which, to be honest, let's be honest, all of us are continually evolving and figuring out who we are, uncovering more layers that inhibit us to be fully ourselves. I feel that this process of life is about uncovering the layers that are preventing us from being our full self versus discovering ourselves out there. I think when we feel like we've discovered ourselves, when we feel like we've had this big breakthrough, what's really happened is we've just cleaned the mirror a little bit more. One layer of grime and dirt is off, or window, let's say window, I like window better. One layer of the grime and the dirt on the window is removed, and we can see ourselves more clearly, and more of us can shine through. Because let's be honest, if you're still trying to figure out who you are, raise your hand. Hello, hands. We're all raising our hands. If this feels like a big question, it is a big question. Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? We're trying to find ourselves, find our purpose out there somewhere in the world. And really, it's right inside of ourselves. We're trying to look into our kids' eyes and figure out who we are. Are we a good mom or are we a bad mom? Do we like what we did? Do we not like what we did right then? We're looking at their opinion and what they think. And then we're thinking, okay, once I get their feedback, then I get to decide who I am. Instead of being who I am, deciding that who I am or who we are, we're talking about this as a group collectively, and taking who I am or who you are to whatever happens. Okay, so what you do in your life, the actions, the doing, the results you're creating, all of that is impacted by what you are emotionally feeling, by who you believe you are. So the things that you do on a daily basis, the actions, that's going to determine the results that you get, because our actions create our results. And who you are determines what you think. Now, ultimately, what you think will determine your actions. But if you're taking actions while feeling negative emotions, with the exception of grief, with the exception of intentionally feeling the futility of a situation and consciously doing that. But when we're taking actions unconsciously, going about our business, feeling a lot of negative emotions, or maybe we're consciously really angry. But no, I would say, let me back that up. When we are consciously choosing to allow a negative emotion, that's a very different experience. But when we're taking an action and we're irritated and we're frustrated and we might be aware of the emotion, but we're not like as aware of it or we're not. And we might be aware of the emotion, but not aware enough to interrupt it. Then what you are doing is not going to be coming from the person you want to be. It's not going to be coming from the most loving, compassionate, kind version of yourself. So picture this. You're a parent who is absolutely determined to be amazing. You want to feel successful. If there was a Parent of the Year award, we would want it. Let's say that's the kind of parent we are. And I think at some level, each of us, we would love to have the validation, the recognition that we're doing a good job, because we want that validation more than we want the award, right? So let's say we're really trying to feel successful. We're signing up for all of the things. We're in the school committee, and we're baking organic snacks at midnight, and we're color coding our child's closet by season. And other parents might be noticing what we're doing and saying, wow. They might even give us a round of applause at the next school assembly for organizing the fall festival, fundraiser. But if you're running yourself ragged, you're missing out on those random Tuesday night dance parties in the kitchen with your kids because you're thinking about the fall festival and what other people are going to think about you if you fail. And you're so preoccupied with that, which all of us have gotten into this loop. I'm giving a random example, but all of us have gotten into this loop at one point or another. Are you really being you? And you being true to who you are matters. Does that make sense? I remember, speaking of fall festival, and I didn't write this down in the notes, but it just brought this memory. My mom is amazing, really, truly amazing. And she had, all growing up, a lot of involvement in the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association. And we did a fall festival at my elementary school, and she made all of these pies. And I remember we're going to the fall festival, and I don't remember the exact situations, but I do remember that I ruined one of the pies. I think I accidentally put my foot in it as we were in the car driving to the school. And this is such a good example of how you can be doing all of those things and still be congruent to who you are. Because I remember I felt terrible. I felt, like I wanted to disappear. And she looked over to me and she said, it's fine. It's totally fine. We just drove the rest of the way there, -1 pie, no problem. Who she was being was, I think, consistent to who she was. Such a good example for me. So what's so interesting is I have this vivid memory. I don't know how old I was, but I was not very old, 10 maybe. And anytime we have a strong emotional reaction, maybe, especially when we are feeling shame and guilt and fear, which is all of the emotions that came up for me as I accidentally stepped in the pie, I have this memory of this moment in our brown 80s Suburban, because I was the oldest of 7. So we had a lot of kids, big metal box of a car. I think it was a diesel. It was really loud. Diesels were so loud back then. And I step in the pie and I'm waiting, I'm bracing for the judgment. My mom shows up, compassionate and loving. So good. So good. Thank you, Mom, if you're listening to this. I love you. Thank you for showing me such a crystal clear example of what it looks like to be in harmony with the actions, being in harmony with who you are. So if we flip this, and that was the positive scenario, so it could go either way. And that's what I want to illustrate is we can be doing all of the things and be in alignment with who we are, or we can be doing all of the things looking for someone else to tell us that we're being good, that we're successful. So who do you want to be as a parent? Who do you want to be? And I love asking this question and then thinking about the hardest moment. So who do I want to be at the dinner table when it's chaotic and the kids start complaining that I didn't cook the right thing, and then a fight breaks out? Who do I want to be then? Or who do I want to be when my kids were little? I would think about this. Who do I want to be during the inevitable toddler meltdown in Target, which happened multiple times? I told you a couple of the stories, but it happened multiple times. When you go out in public with little kids, it's, up for debate what's going to happen. Who knows? You can plan your best, and sometimes it goes off without a hitch, and sometimes you have the toddler meltdown because they're hungry, they're tired, or they just see that toy that they cannot live without. Or who are you going to be, or who do you want to be when your teenager is giving you the silent treatment, or not? Maybe they're not giving you the silent treatment. They're going the other direction. They're yelling at you. They're frustrated. They're rolling their eyes. They're thinking you're asking them to do inconceivable things like make their bed and clean up their room. Who do you want to be then? And then who do we want to be in those moments when our child is struggling and they just need a shoulder to cry on? When you focus on being true to yourself, regardless of what's going on outside of you, everything falls into place. Your actions will naturally flow from who you are. They will. They honestly will. Because let's be real, your kids don't need a perfect parent. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness they don't need a perfect parent, because none of us are going to hit that place. None of us. They need you in all your beautiful, messy, authentic glory. And that's worth more than approval from other parents, from their teachers at school, from your mother-in-law, from your neighbor, from your friend. You approving yourself is more important than anyone else approving you. And if you're thinking right now, Andee, I don't approve of how I'm acting, that's a beautiful awareness, and we can work with that. We can work with that. Awareness is the first step to changing. We have to have the conscious awareness of anything that is not working for us in our life. And typically that will bring up a little frustration. If we step on the scale, we don't like the number, it's going to be a little frustrating. And if I think, okay, I don't really like that number, I don't really like who I've been in around food and exercise, then I can make a difference. If I'm oblivious to it, I ignore it, I can't do anything about it. And the same thing with parenting, realizing I do not love the way I'm being at bedtime. I don't like how I greet my children in the morning. I don't love the low grade irritation that I feel around my teenager. Well, that is, my friend, such good awareness. And it might feel uncomfortable, might bring up a lot of discomfort, but it's the first step to shift. So, and let me give you a personal example here, and then I'm going to share this book and some of these points that I read in this book that I just love. But I will share, okay, so we're transitioning back to regular life as we've been on this amazing, epic, beautiful international trip. And so we've had to start to talk about some of the standards that we have as a family, some of the rules, some of the way things are going to flow at home. And I was talking with my girls about just chores and the upkeep of their bedroom and what was going to be expected, because we really haven't had that for 6 months. We haven't had a singular place that is ours. We're moving often. And so cleaning up your room, it doesn't really work with living out of a suitcase. So we were talking about it, and there was some annoyance, I could tell that, they were just bothered that we were talking about it. And I was reiterating just not leaving trails when we're at home, and doing a daily chore and making sure their room was, cleaned up and their bed was made, and all the things, just simple stuff, nothing crazy. And the interesting thing was I could feel just them not wanting to have the conversation. They did tell me they were a little bit bothered by it because they thought I was jumping to conclusions about how they were going to show up at the house. And I got very clear, and I love who I was being. And I was okay if they were bothered by the conversation. I was okay. Of course, they're not going to want to talk about chores and cleaning their room and not leaving trails. Of course, it wasn't a problem. So I was able to neutralize them. I was able to neutralize their behavior, I should say. Neutralize their behavior in my mind and not make it a problem, and show up aligned to who I wanted to be, regardless of how they were being. They weren't giving me the feedback my brain would like. Ideally, as parents, we want our children to recognize our wisdom. Thank you, mother. Yes, that's true. We don't want a messy house. And you're right. We've been out of practice cleaning up our room and keeping things tidy and doing our own laundry because we've been on the go. This was a great conversation. I'm so glad we revisited this, that we can be dialed in when we go back home. That's what our silly brains think and want. And that's not what I got. And that's okay. It took them a few hours, and they came back and they said, you are so right. We needed to have that conversation. We needed to have a little reset. But in the moment, that's not what they told me. And so when we can show up, and this was a tiny example, by the way, it's a tiny example of what I've been talking about so far. But it's in those tiny moments, the things that aren't really charged, that we get to, and the big stuff. Let me say that. It's the little, it's the big, it's all of it, that we get to continue to see, to measure. Am I being me in this moment? Or am I looking for external validation? Or am I irritated or feeling controlling and pushing? How am I being in this situation? Do I like it? And then we get to learn. So no matter how we show up, we get to learn from every single event. I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation, that my kids were able to push back a little bit, that I was able to double check and do a gut check of who I was being and what I was thinking and feeling as I was explaining it. And there were a couple of moments where I could feel my nervous system get a little bit charged, and I was able to have the awareness around it and navigate it beautifully. So I share that just because this happened just this week, and it was a good reminder as I was thinking about what I wanted to, as I was preparing this podcast episode and thinking about what I wanted to talk to you all about the alignment between who we are being and what we are saying or doing. Okay, I didn't expect to share that, but I think that was a good example illustrating just this idea of who we are being, what we are feeling is more important than what we are doing. And when we're feeling in alignment with who we want to be as a parent, especially, the actions, the words, the doing comes out fairly easily without a lot of missteps. And if we have missteps, we are able to correct quickly. Okay, this book was recommended to me years ago. I heard it somewhere. I don't know who recommended it, but I heard it somewhere. It's called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. It's written by Amy Morin, Morin. If you want to go check it out, I like it. So 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And I love learning and growing. I love, especially the brain. I love learning about the brain and how it works. I want to make sense of what I'm doing as a parent when I feel, and as a human, when I feel as though I'm not firing on all cylinders. I want to understand that. So I'm always curious about learning more. So this book is good. And I wanted to talk about 13 things that she goes over in the book. And I want to talk about how who you are being in the world is related to these 13 things she brings up. Because as parents, we have to be mentally strong people. We have to be mentally strong people. That's how we become the most emotionally mature person in the room. That's how we stay compassionate and firm when our child is throwing a fit, when they're not liking what's going on, when they are devastated by something their friend said, and they are, as a result, not only upset about what their friend said, but now upset at everything we do, and they're irritated by their brothers. And how do we show up the way we want to? Well, we've got to be mentally, I would also say emotionally strong. And by strong, I don't mean numb. I would say strong means having the resilience, the emotional resilience, the emotional capacity. And how do we get that? We feel deeply. We have comfort around negative emotions. We invite all of the negative emotions in. So I love this idea of looking at these 13 things through the lens of parenting. So remember, you are a human being, not a human doing. Have you ever heard that? I don't remember where I heard that, but I love it. I love that distinction, who you want to be versus what you do, or who you are. That's a better way to say it. Who you are, the beingness, the essence of who you are versus what you are doing. Okay, so the first thing is, this is the first thing on her list in the book of the 13 things that mentally strong people don't do. So the first thing is they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. Now, I'm not saying they don't feel sorry for themselves sometimes, but they don't waste time dwelling in self-pity. And as soon as they see themselves cycling in that self-pity, feeling sorry for themselves, feeling victimized by their external situations, they notice it. So what does that look like? It looks like, let me say what I've seen as in the incredible parents who are inside of League, and they are not letting themselves stay stuck, dwelling in self-pity, dwelling in not good enoughness, dwelling in doubt. They're showing up on the calls we have every week, the live calls. We call them office hours, where you come in and you can ask anything. They show up and they'll say it. Hey, I am feeling stuck. I feel not good enough. I can tell I'm not in a good space. And they ask for help. That's one way it looks like when we don't let ourselves stay in self-pity. It also means that we're not spending our energy wallowing in what's unfair or wishing things were different. Now, there's a difference between our brain offering this idea and us saying, oh, yes, there's part of my nervous system that wishes things were different and thinks this is unfair. And I see that and I honor that and I love that part of me. That's different. I am a huge proponent of that. We need that for healthy nervous system navigation. We really do. To be emotionally solid, we've got to honor all parts of ourselves. What we don't do is we don't get lost in it. We don't get sucked into believing that as our true reality. And I love this idea because honestly, when we start indulging in self-pity, when we start getting swept away and now it's, we have this nervous system take over, what good comes from that? I think a lot of good comes from consciously feeling the self-doubt and the self-pity and acknowledging it as part of ourselves and welcoming it in. I love that. But what I'm talking about is when you're indulging in it to the point where you just believe you're not good enough. You believe these bad things about yourself. What have you actually gained from feeling bad about yourself? Believing that something's wrong with you. So allow yourself to feel sad. Take that trip from mad to sad, as you hear me talk about all of the time. Dr. Neufeld, that's from him. That's how he phrases it. This idea from, I'm frustrated that this isn't working, frustrated that I can't figure this out. It could be bedtime. It could be meals. It could be a relationship with your teenager. And I let myself feel that all the way through to sadness, which is consciously feeling those emotions and then allowing your nervous system to go back to parasympathetic, to go back to homeostasis, to go back to a calm, regulated place. So that's consciously feeling your emotions. And then we use that productive cycle of adaptation, because when we go from mad to sad and we feel our emotions, we become more emotionally mature. And we use that cycle of adaptation to move into a more powerful place. So instead of indulging in the emotion and letting the self-pity drain your power, you use it for your benefit. You use it as a catalyst. I love that so much. When you decide not to indulge in self-pity, it doesn't matter what obstacles come your way, because you're not going to get stuck in poor me mode. And that's so powerful. You're going to have the awareness. You're going to get the help and support you need. And then you're going to use that experience to up-level yourself. I just was thinking about this idea that what if we refused to let any challenge, any obstacle, any moment, our brain, our nervous system offered up, you're not good enough, you don't know what you're doing, you should doubt yourself, you should dwell in self-pity. What if we used all of those situations to increase our awareness and we mined the gold out of those situations? We got so much awareness around how our default programming works, what our thoughts were about it, the emotions that come up, so that we learn and grow. Now, as you know, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm saying it in my own words because I don't think this is a direct quote, but Nelson Mandela said something about, I never fail, I only learn and grow. Something like that. At least that's the way my brain has taken that quote and turned it into my awareness, my meaning. And I love that. And that's what we can do. We can take all of these moments and refuse to not learn from our most challenging moments. Okay, next one. They don't give their power away. Ooh, I love this one. I love this one so much. I've talked about this before, this idea that blaming other people is how we lose all control over our life and making things better. So by expecting other people to make us feel better, we are giving our power away. By letting someone else make decisions for us, we give our power away. Does that make sense? If we think our kids need to change so that we can feel better, we have no ability to control our kids' behavior to the point that our brains want to. We can influence it, we can impact it. But if we think that our wellness, our validation, our worth, our good mood is dependent on our kids' behavior, we have given our power away to them. And let's be honest, they are still trying to figure out how to make sense of their own world. They do not need the responsibility of making us feel good. Okay, third one, they don't shy away from change. Change takes work. It demands mental effort and energy, which is why so many people resist it. It's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. It requires us to step outside what feels easy. So yeah, who wants to do that? It's much easier to just surf YouTube, to watch something, to scroll. I get it. I have a human brain too. But adapting to each new stage of your child's life, that can be challenging, right? We want to lean into that. What worked when they were toddlers doesn't necessarily work when they become teenagers. If you resist that change, you're going to struggle. If you wish they were still the sweet little, 5-year-old, and now they've turned into this 13-year-old that you don't recognize, and that's where you are, you're pushing against the change, we're going to struggle. But if you're willing to adjust, to put in the effort, to evolve with them, you're going to create a stronger relationship. You're going to have smoother transitions. You're all going to up-level yourselves. You're going to become mentally strong, emotionally equipped. I think parenting is the best classroom for our growth. I love it for that because we intentionally show up to class every single day. So the key isn't avoiding change. It's training ourselves to embrace it, especially when it leads to growth. And really, if we embrace change, it will inevitably lead to growth. Number 4, they don't focus on what they can't control. talk about this all of the time. I think there might even be a podcast episode. There's for sure a chapter in my book called Control the Controllables, which means stay in your own lane. If everything feels like it's falling apart, focus on what you actually have control over. What can I do today? This is so powerful. In the book, I talk about writing down this whole list of things that I had control over when I felt overwhelmed by my life. And I didn't think I had control over anything. And then I focused on making a list of what do I have control over. I'd really love to not feel so out of control right now. It's so good. So mentally and emotionally strong people don't focus on what they can control. One of the things I talk a lot about as part of Connect Method parenting is that the only thing truly beyond your control is a situation around you. But here's the important part. Most of what we struggle with isn't actually the situation itself, but the way we are thinking about the situation. So the majority of what we experience comes from our beliefs, our thoughts, our mindset, not just the situation. So instead of spending energy on all of the things we can't change, like the external events or other people's choices or the state of our toddler or what our mother-in-law texted us last night, you can shift your focus to something you do have power over, your own thoughts and reactions. You can't always prevent your child from throwing a tantrum in the grocery store or for them refusing to do their homework. We can't always prevent that. We can try our best. We can create what I call response plans and set everyone up for success and try to make situations work better for people. Make sure our kids have snacks when we go to the grocery store. Make sure they're rested. Make sure we're rested. Get ourselves ready for homework time if that's been a battle. But sometimes it still goes sideways. But here's what we can always be in charge of, always have control over, is how we decide to respond. And this will be something we gradually learn and have more and more capacity around in challenging situations, but it's something we can grow in our capacity to do it. So do you spiral in frustration thinking, I can't handle this, or why is this happening to me? Or do you take a step back, breathe, reframe the situation in a way that helps you handle it better? Your thoughts will dictate the experience you're having. And when you can notice those thoughts and you can take control over them, you can control your life. So good, right? Oh, such a good reminder. Okay, number 5, they don't worry about pleasing everyone. Man, this hits hard. It's so true. Goodness, I am a recovering people pleaser. Successful people, though, don't spend their time trying to make everyone else happy, because when you're constantly focused on pleasing others, you're going to end up not taking care of yourself. You're going to push your own needs aside. You're going to ignore that inner wisdom, that inner voice, your intuition, your higher self. You're going to lose sight of what you truly want, who you want to be, because you're going to be a chameleon trying to be who other people, or at least who you think other people want you to be. I always say that people pleasing is a form of dishonesty. And I say this with so much compassion, so much compassion. This is not a judgment. It's just an awareness I had, because I am a people pleaser by default. And I notice it come up still. I notice it come up, and I have to remind myself that I want to show up as me. I want to show up as me, because when you're constantly putting others first, and I'm all for service. So this is not saying, take care of your needs and neglect other people. I'm just saying we can only bring so much of ourselves to other situations and serve if we are full, if we feel capable, if our cup is full. It's such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. If I'm exhausted or I'm not feeling physically well, if I've been sacrificing, let's say health, if I've been sacrificing my health, I haven't been eating well, I haven't been sleeping enough, I haven't been asking for help so that maybe I can get more sleep or get better food, and I'm depleted, I'm not going to show up well in any aspect of my life. Think about it. When you agree to do something you don't actually want to do, just to avoid disappointing someone, you essentially are pretending. You say yes when you mean no, and over time that builds resentment. Lots of resentment. I've seen this in myself. I've seen this in other parents that I've worked with, that when we constantly say yes, but we don't want to do it, we are going to feel resentment. We're hoping that by sacrificing our own needs, these people will like us, or that our kids will appreciate us, or that they'll feel connected to us. But that's not genuine connection. It's manipulation, even if it's unintentional. So we don't want to beat ourselves up around it. It's not helpful. I've tried that, been there, done that. Don't do that. But notice, oh, there I go again, trying to get this person to appreciate me, trying to get my kids to like me, trying not to ruffle any feathers. So I'm sacrificing my own needs, hoping someone's going to acknowledge, validate, appreciate. That's not real connection. That's manipulation. even if it's unintentional. So maybe you feel pressure to say yes every time your kids ask for something because you don't want them to be upset. But if you're constantly giving in just to keep the peace, you're not setting honest boundaries that need to be set. You're not having the structure in your home that needs to be there so they feel safe. And in the long run, that helps no one. That's why it's so important to recognize people pleasing for what it is. Being true to yourself, even if it means disappointing other people, is the only way to live with real integrity. Number 6, they don't fear taking calculated risks. So not ruled by fear. I'd like to think of myself as this kind of person. I'm definitely working on it. I've grown so much in it. I think there's more improvement, more space for me to even improve further. At the end of the day, when I'm in a place where I'm not afraid of taking calculated risks, I'm realizing that the worst thing that can happen is a feeling: discomfort, embarrassment, disappointment. And I'm okay with feeling any of those things. So that conversation I was telling you with my girls that needed to happen, this is a very little example, but it needed to happen. But there was part of me that knew they weren't going to like this conversation. I mean, who wants to talk about chores and responsibilities and keeping your room clean, blah, blah. I mean, we have just been on 6 months of high adventure. So coming back to reality sometimes can be a little challenging. So we're talking about not fun stuff. And I knew there was probably going to be some discomfort, embarrassment, and disappointment. And you might think, well, this isn't a very big risk. But, I could have not had the conversation and had the waters be muddy and we get home and have expectations that haven't been communicated. I was willing to take the risk. Yeah, there might be some discomfort and embarrassment and disappointment, but I don't want to go home and have it be unclear what the rules are at home, what we're doing now that we're back in normal life. And so, yeah, that's a very small calculated risk. But I want you to think about it in parenting, because we're not, stock investors. We're not investing. I'm going to take a calculated risk maybe you are a stock investor, but, in the role of parenting, we're not doing I'm going to invest $1 million into this real estate thing and I'm taking a calculated risk because I've run the numbers. I mean, yes, that's also true. And what I'm talking about with successful, and what she was talking about in the book about successful people, not being afraid of taking calculated risks. But in parenting, I want to make it real in that realm too, because there are going to be things where I have done my work. I've run my numbers. I know what needs to be done. I know what will serve everybody. And yeah, I might get pushback. My kids might not like it. I might feel uncomfortable and I need to do it anyway. And if the worst thing that can happen is me feeling a negative emotion, then I'm all in. It serves everyone better to have clear, I'm using my example here with going back home, having clear rules, a clear family standard reinstated. It needed to be revisited. And to be honest, these structures we have in our home, our rules, our chores, probably need to be revisited every 6 months at least, just to make sure everyone is on board and make adjustments, because adjustments are constantly needed. So if the risk is intentional and well thought out, I'm willing to go for it, because growth comes from stepping outside what's comfortable. So I had intentionally thought about the conversation I wanted to have with my girls. I thought it out. I was willing to go for it. I'm willing to change myself, to try new things, to take risks that push forward. I'm willing to challenge myself to try new things and to take risks that push me forward, even if they don't always work out perfectly. And I would say this conversation I had with my girls, it wasn't perfect. Perfect would have been them saying, yes, mother, I love all the things you've talked to us about. In my brain, at least, that's what I would have probably classified as perfect. In some ways, it was perfect. Of course, they don't want to talk about this, but in the traditional sense, it didn't work out perfectly, but it did work out beautifully. It was absolutely what needed to happen. So sometimes the uncomfortable moments are exactly what leads to the best long-term results. That is the truth. Okay. So instead of avoiding fear, choose to face it, because every time you do, you're going to evolve. Number 7, they don't dwell on the past. This is really similar to the idea of not stressing over things you can't control, but a little bit different, because you don't get stuck in the past. You're not replaying old events in a way that drags you down emotionally. And here's something important to remember. When you think about the past, you're not actually reliving it. You're just thinking about it now, in the present, through the lens of your current mindset. You're not accessing old thoughts. You're creating new ones about the past right now. You're telling yourself a story about what happened. And if that story is painful or full of regret, then you're actively choosing those thoughts that make you feel worse. I just want that to sit for a minute. And I want you to hear that with so much love, because I don't think consciously we're doing this. Subconsciously, we're just going through our stories, because I want this to become a more conscious thing, and to realize that we have the ability to actively choose thoughts that make us feel worse when when we beat ourselves up over the past, and that we can choose something different. Because when we're just ruminating and our brain is collecting more and more evidence for how we didn't show up well and how we didn't do good or how our kids didn't react the way we wanted them to, it's not helpful. So maybe you regret how you handled a situation with your child. Maybe you lost your patience. You said something you didn't mean, or you missed that opportunity to connect with them when they were struggling. And you can sit in guilt. You can replay that over and over again, or you can choose to think about it differently. You could think, I did my best with what I knew then and who I was able to be in that moment, and I can do better moving forward. I can learn. My 3 favorite questions when I'm evaluating a situation is, what worked, what didn't work, and what am I going to do differently next time? From this neutral place, when we can ask those questions without the judgment from this neutral place, then things start to change. Then I have the awareness and the ability to grow and evolve. So dwelling on the past or wishing it was different doesn't change it, but choosing a new way to think about it, that's where your power is. Number 8, they don't make the same mistake over and over and over and over again. They take lessons from their mistakes. Doesn't mean they stop having challenges. They're just learning every time the challenge comes up. So mentally strong people notice patterns. They're paying attention. That's the key difference. They're aware of the patterns. They notice their thoughts, and they take time to understand why things happen instead of just reacting. And I say this all the time, self-awareness is everything. When you slow down and you observe what's going on, you can start to see the root of the problem, the root of the actions. You don't run on autopilot anymore. You break out of the cycle of making the exact same mistake again and again. Now, you might still make mistakes. It might even be the same mistake, but every time you're getting wiser and wiser. This applies so much in parenting. If you keep losing your temper with your kids in the same situation, it's easy to just feel guilty or frustrated. But if you step back and you ask yourself, what's really triggering me? Why does this keep happening? That's when the real change happens. When you start paying attention, you can start shifting things. That's how growth happens. All right, number 9, she says they don't resent other people's success. Ooh, this is so good. So they don't take someone else's success as a reflection of their own worth. They don't twist it into something negative about themselves. Instead, they see it as proof of what's possible. I love, love, love this so much. So we feel inspired by other people. We don't feel threatened. Part of this comes from us feeling abundant, us feeling the reality that there's enough money, there's enough success, there's enough love, there's enough kindness and compassion in the world to go around for everyone. Some people don't have to have less of it for other people to have more of it. So when you see someone land this opportunity that maybe you would have liked, how do you react? Do you let it discourage you? Make it mean you're not good enough? Or do you let it fuel you, showing you if they did that, I can do it too? I love stepping into this belief. If they did it, I could do it too. So if another mom is such a good example of having a deep quality relationship with their teenager, I think if they could do that, I could do that too. Or when my kids were little, if I saw another parent that was able to handle a tantrum in a way that I just was in awe of, can we think, okay, if they can do that, I can do it too. If it's possible for some human out in the world to do, then it's possible for me to do. And my path to get there and their path to get there might be different, but I'm going to believe, because I like this thought, I'm going to believe it's possible. And you can contrast that to scarcity thinking and somehow believing that their success or their growth or their ability to navigate this challenging situation with their toddler takes away from your own ability to have success. The truth is, success isn't pie. There's enough to go around. And the more you can genuinely feel happy for others, for their successes, for their wins, for the amazing qualities they have, the more open you are to receiving success and growth for yourself. Number 10, they don't give up after the first failure. Most people aren't even willing to risk failing once. I call this failing ahead of time. But those who are mentally and emotionally strong don't let failure stop them. They don't let the first failure stop them, or the second, or the fifth. They just keep going and learning and adjusting along the way. And this is something I have actively been developing in myself over my lifetime, especially over the last 15, 20 years, not letting myself be someone who gets discouraged by failure. Having the mindset, setbacks don't define me, they push me forward. So if you try something connective with your child, some new way to interact with them when they're having a tantrum, and it doesn't seem to go well, doesn't go according to plan, don't give up and assume it'll never work. Instead, be aware of the situation, evaluate the situation, tweak your approach, try again, and stay committed to learning and growing. I was just working with a mom and she was feeling very overwhelmed by the state of her house and needing to get the chores done. And we came up with a few ideas to tackle the house and have fun while, playfully engaging the kids to do it. And the next day she messaged me and she said she didn't feel fun. It didn't work. It wasn't very playful, but she was coming back for more ideas. She wasn't giving up. Yeah, it didn't go the way she wanted to, but she wasn't saying, I tried it. I can't. Let's do something else. I love that. That is the process of iterating and becoming more of who we are, is not giving up, not letting failure mean anything other than, I just don't understand the process yet. I'm missing something. I want to figure out what it is. Of course, if we haven't been approaching chore time in a playful way, it's most likely that it's not going to work the first time. The people who succeed in the long run aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who refuse to let failure be the end of their story. And with parenting, this is so important. We are going to fail. Our kids are going to change up their behavior. They're going to change up their pushbacks, and not seeing that as a failure when we don't exactly know what to do is really, really important. So we want to be mentally and emotionally strong as parents. And in order to be successful, it's not that we're not going to fail. It's that we're not going to let those failures be the end of our story. They're going to be a gateway to more understanding and a catalyst to further growth. Number 11, they don't fear being alone. And I've said this many times before that a lot of times when we don't want to be alone, it's because we don't want to be with our own thoughts. We're restless, we're uncomfortable, maybe we're bored. And a study led by psychologist Timothy Wilson, I had to look this up because I'd heard of this study before, but I wanted to make sure I told you the facts so you can go check it out yourself. It was at the University of Virginia. It was published in 2014. And they set up this study where participants were asked to sit alone in a room for 6 to 15 minutes without any distractions. So they didn't have any phones, nothing. They just had to sit there. And they found that many of the participants were very, very uncomfortable. And then some of them, I don't know if everybody, but some of them were given the option to have a mild electric shock. Yes, a mild electric shock instead of having to sit quietly with their own thoughts. And 67% of the men and 25% of the women opted for a self-administered shock. I think that's so fascinating. I would rather have an electric shock than sit with my thoughts. And that's what 67% of the men chose and 25% of the women. So this study shows how challenging it can be for us to engage in introspection without any external stimuli. It also suggests a discomfort with solitude and a preference for any form of activity, even if it's unpleasant. I'll take the electric shock. It doesn't feel good, but at least it's something over quiet reflection. But someone who's mentally strong, who takes care of their mind and nurtures their thoughts, doesn't struggle with being alone with themselves or with their thoughts. They're very familiar with their thoughts. They know that there's a combination of empowering ones and not so empowering ones, and they're okay with that. In fact, they might even enjoy it. I would say they do enjoy it. They enjoy getting to know themselves. They have developed a relationship with themselves. So someone who's mentally and emotionally strong, who takes care of their mind and nurtures their thoughts, doesn't struggle with being alone. They enjoy it. They seek solitude for a chance to reflect, to be creative, to truly listen to themselves. They don't rely on external distractions to feel fulfilled, and they know that everything they need is already within them. So good. So good. I remember when I first came across that study, being surprised that people would choose to have an electric shock versus sit with themselves, and then also not being surprised by it, because this is a skill set that we have to develop. And it's so easy in this world with so much going on and so many distractions to not develop this ability to sit with our own thoughts and to create a really good relationship with ourselves. So anyway, that was an interesting one. So glad we talked about it. Okay, number 12, they don't feel the world owes them anything. And I love this one. I've noticed that entitlement can sneak up on me. Sometimes I catch myself, and sometimes I see it in my clients that I'm working with. That feeling of I deserve this or someone owes me can be so dangerous because it hands all of our power over to something outside of us. So when you're waiting for someone else to give you what you think you're owed, you're putting your sense of control in their hands. And worse, it keeps you stuck in a mindset that says you can't create or achieve what you want on your own. So do you carry that feeling of expectation in your life? Do you feel like the world, your job, your family, your kids owe you something? Maybe you think, after everything I do, my kids should really appreciate me more. But is that thought serving you? Or does it make you feel powerless and frustrated? Is it worth reflecting on? Do you want to be someone who waits for what you're owed? Or do you want to be someone who takes full responsibility for your life, for your fulfillment, for your happiness? And the last one is that they don't expect immediate results. Ooh, so good. And this can feel so hard because I think at our core, all of us want instant gratification. We want to take actions and see the outcome right away. But over time, it has become so clear to me, I've come to realize that real lasting success doesn't work like that. That's not how nature works. Seasons are slow and steady. Sunrises happen gradually, unlike turning on a light in our room. It's not all of a sudden, it's completely on, it's slow. And that's how this world works naturally, in its natural element. Nothing happens quickly. It's consistency, not quick fixes that lead to meaningful results. And yet we live in this world that constantly pushes the idea of instant gratification. Everywhere we turn, marketing promises of overnight success, effortless weight loss, and get rich quick schemes, or even get your kids to behave instantly by giving them this treat or ultimatum. Do you see the instant gratification that comes with punitive consequences, rewards, threats, timeouts? We want an instant change, but it's not how nature works. We've been conditioned to crave the immediate payoff. We want the reward without the struggle. We want the win without the setbacks. And we definitely don't want to deal with frustrations or failures along the way. But the real question is, are you someone who's willing to show up consistently, even when, or maybe because of the results not being immediate, knowing they're not going to be immediate, and I'm showing up anyway. I'm embracing that. I'm okay with that. I expect that. This is huge in parenting. Maybe you're trying to teach your child a new habit, like cleaning up after themselves, and you feel like there's no progress that's been made. It's easy to get frustrated and think, why isn't this working yet? But parenting, like anything else, requires patience and requires time. It's not about one big moment of change. It's about showing up, reinforcing the lesson, and trusting that small actions add up over time. So are you someone who can stick with the process, even when the process is slow? Because that's where real success happens. So all of these qualities that we've been talking about today, all of them make up who you want to be. And if you embody them, not perfectly, but consistently, you'll notice that no matter what situation you walk into, whether it's a new behavior problem that your child's having, a tough relationship, a hard conversation, bedtime that's gotten completely off the rails, you'll still be you. So many people define themselves by what they do, by the external things and accomplishments and results and external validation. And as parents, this might look like us slipping into defining ourselves by our kids' behavior. But just remember, it's not as important what you do. It's more important who you are being while you do it. You can remain true to yourself no matter what happens around you. And defining your worth by how well-behaved your kids are, or by how clean your house is, or by how many activities you manage to juggle that day, it's a dangerous, dangerous slope. It's so easy, though, to attach our identity to these things. But what happens when the house is messy, when your child's struggling, or when things don't go as planned? What if that didn't change who you were being, how you were emotionally showing up? What if instead of asking, what do I do? You ask, who do I want to be in this moment? With parenting, a lot of us by default ask the question, what do I do when my child does X, Y, Z? But what if we focused first on who we wanted to be when my child does X, Y, Z? Who do I want to be when they're struggling? Who do I want to be when they're having, a meltdown? Who do I want to be when they're angry at me? When they don't like anything I just said and they're so frustrated with me? When they don't want to do their homework? Who do I want to be? Because when you shift from defining yourself that way, you feel more grounded, more in control, more empowered to shape your own life, not just react to it. So take a moment and really think, who are you choosing to be today? And then who do you want to be in the future, and create from that place? Okay, that's what I got for you today. I loved going through all of that with you. I can't wait to talk to you all soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Go connect with your kids. Go focus on who you're being. And we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.